Okay, good evening, everybody. And sorry about faking everybody out yesterday, but I got sleepy, so I had to put it off because I preferably come on here and talk to you with a, at least somewhat coherent and functioning brain. But how's it going, Tali?
Oh, it's going. It's going. Yeah, you and I were just lamenting a couple minutes ago on just being annoyed at everyone and everything they have to say. So thankfully, people are now coming here so they can listen to only the best things that people saying have to offer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Days are getting longer. There's more sun. There's hope that winter won't, go on forever. And
God bless.
when when you remember when you live in like these dark places, in the winter, it just kind of drags. In February, it's like,
Yeah.
But we're getting out, and I've been like, I don't know, this is probably silly, but I've been like trying to watch TV. Like I have to like make a concerted effort to watch fictional shows as opposed to like YouTube, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to watch at least like an hour of television a day just to like escape, just for the pure, escapism of it all. And I think that's probably a good thing to like, it's not touching grass, so to say, but it's just like, you know what I mean? Not focusing on like commentary.
It's something lighter,
talking about and light and just like can zone out and whatnot. So, it's probably
I watched the documentary, the little mini series on like behind the scenes of America's Next Top Model. I guess it just came out like the other day, so I watched that last night. It's pretty interesting. It was that's funny. I am both fake and gay.
I am probably both fake and gay too. Yeah, to varying degrees.
Yeah, there you go. Depends on the day. But anyway, yeah, I watched that yesterday. I also too probably should. Whenever I turn on Netflix, I end up watching something like reality or documentary more often than fictionalized. But I probably should watch more like scripted, fictionalized stuff too.
Yeah. Are you on the right mic, Tali?
I don't know. Let me check.
I'm hearing table noise. $0 to say. I don't hear any of that.
Well, okay, this should be better.
Oh, that is better. I couldn't tell because it goes right to my. I was gonna say my earballs. Fuck my ears.
Okay, hopefully that's better. It was on the default mic. It was not on my mic.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It seems to be better.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. 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 And I've been also watching, I don't know, that like whole missing grandma thing. I've been like following. So I like that.
I really haven't. Yeah, I haven't tuned in much to that story. It's very disturbing, though.
It is.
From the little bits I gather.
Yeah. And then it made me think before. I was like, oh man, I should like say sorry to my mom for like running away when I was a kid. Because I just started thinking about like, oh, she must have been so upset to not know where I was. You like these things that you think of like way past the fact. And I've had talks with her before, but like obviously like when something like this comes up and you see like the entire world searching for somebody, and I'm like, oh fuck, that's like, one of those things.
Yeah,
kind of like comes full circle. But yeah.
You feel bad for instilling the fear of life in her.
Kind of. I mean, yes and no. I feel bad, yes, but I also know that like I also feel justified in other ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It like life is complicated, and as an adolescent,
certainly
I made the probably the best choices I could make, but like those were still fucking terrible. You know what I mean? Those were bad choices. But yeah.
You'll get it right in the next life. I'm sure you're gonna get a 10.
I know. I want to do over. I want to come back. I like it here. I'm stoked to be here. You know. It's fun.
This is reason to keep one foot in the Elon world, and still have a little curiosity about our tech overlords. Yes. Maybe they can make that possible for you.
I tell my kids this all the time when they get like that existential fear about like, what if you die? I was like, no, you know, there's gonna be a chip, you know.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, this makes them feel better. And yeah, who knows? I'm all for it. Keep my head in a jar somewhere.
Yeah.
So. And yeah, so you messaged me about
of head in a jar.
Yeah.
I don't know how I was gonna make that transition, but I wanted to talk today about the latest polling results that came out of the Argument magazine, which is Jerusalem Dempsis's. Her last name is Dempsis. This is her liberal kind of like it's not dark woke. I don't exactly know what dark woke is, but they're trying to be like edgy liberal a little bit. Even edgy, I'm probably overstating it, but they're trying to be
rational,
reasonable, yeah, and like open to debate and argument. Essentially, right? Is like they're trying to not shut down the conversation. Great. It's still like a pretty they're pretty left as far as I'm concerned. I don't read a lot of their stuff, but I watch the Argument Mag podcast, and I just think it's really funny because in part of her scripted intro to the podcast, she says, like, you know, at the Argument Mag, where we speak to everyone from communist to conservative, and I'm just like, those are not the extremes of the spectrum. Yeah, like you're basically saying we will talk to any crazy psychotic person on the left and your bog standard conservative, basically, right? Person to the right. So that gets me every time, and literally every time, and I'm just like, how do they not change? Do they just like the alliteration of like communist to conservative or something? Totally. But to me, it really it does make it just strikes me as not even out of touch. I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling.
Because they probably actually aren't. They probably don't want to talk to the quote unquote alt-right. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
They probably want to talk to like just to the line of conservative, and that's probably it. And there might be a point to like they may have a point there that like people too far down that road on the right might not be. They might not think they're reachable. Anyway,
well, but communists aren't reachable either. Yeah.
No, but yeah, I guess it's on the
They're just right. They're just more sympathetic. Yeah. They're just more sympathetic to the communists. No, totally.
Yeah.
So the Argument, they have like a whole polling whatever the word, department, for lack of better terms, I'm sure, at the Argument. And so they do a lot of polling on all different political and cultural questions. And if viewers of our stream will recall, the Live and Learn boys had their pollster, Laksha Jain, had him on the podcast, and they were all big fans of Laksha.
Okay.
And Laksha seems like a smart guy. I mean, he's to my left, but he seems to live in reality, or he's more comfortable living in reality than some of these other people on the left. So Laksha Jain publishes the results of their most recent polling data on trans issues. And he basically says, you know, like these are like by far the worst polling results for progressives that we've seen in any of the polls that we've conducted. The framing of it too was just like crazy. He basically said, you know, like the majority of Americans like agree with the conservative position on these things, where it's like, you know, even to call some of this stuff the conservative position is giving the game away. Like
Yeah.
believing that the sexes are different, right? And believing that males have physical advantages in sports and stuff. Like, you really shouldn't cede that as a conservative position. But okay, so the whole framing and everything is quite loaded. But the results, I think the results are quite interesting, and B, the reaction of what I've seen so far is very interesting. I'm interested in the reaction and the silence. I'm very curious if the pod boys if the live and learn boys will touch this at all, and what they're gonna make of it. And yeah, I want to talk about the results and what this means for the Dems and their ability to reflect and extremism and all of these things, and doubling down and dribbling down.
Okay. So here.
I can pull it up too.
It's just article, but I will.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah, so they had a set of questions. The first one that you have up here is about bathroom restrictions. And they had other questions like surgeries for minors, like puberty blockers and hormones for minors. Basic civil rights protections, like protections in like housing and employment and stuff like that. And in every single one, except for the basic civil protections and housing and employment, which arguably are already baked into our, to our legal codes. Those were the only ones that were favorable to the left wing or the trans position, the maximalist trans position. What stuck out to me in particular, some of these results are not that surprising. We saw similar polling. I think it might have been from the New York Times, or at least they published it like shortly after the election. So some of this is not that surprising, but what I found particularly surprising is how bad these results were for the, again, trans maximalist position, even considering the wording of the questions. So on the questions of puberty blockers and hormones and surgery, we saw similar disapproval ratings across both parties to what we saw in that New York Times polling after the election. But the wording here was even more favorable to the left-wing position. So in the original polling, it basically just asked just straight, do you support these types of interventions? In the arguments polling, they phrased the question as, do you support, X, Y, or Z intervention in consultation with parents and doctors when deemed medically necessary? Now, not to go on my whole, spiel for too long, but I don't think it's ever appropriate to deem transition medically necessary. There's a lie in there about like what we can even know about the efficacy of this treatment, and just the fact that it's a physical treatment. It's changing the body to treat a mental condition, essentially. So even with all of that loading, that assuming that it is deemed medically necessary, and all people are on board, doctor, parents, and kid, it's still overwhelmingly unpopular. And that I was surprised to see that.
I'm not sure, but does the article talk about where this like polling was like several years ago?
Yes. So not all of these things have been tracked in this specific way, but Laksha sort of narratively talks about just some of like the differences. Some of these things were polled, and yes, these are like big swings, like 20-point swings even, against the sort of trans maximalist position. But some of these other things he sort of narrativizes through current events. if we kind of flash back to 2016, which was right in the kind of like height of TDS. Maybe that's not even true exactly. And not that this is exactly a TDS thing, but people were, everyone was worked up when Trump got elected, right? And in the election leading up. And so there was like a big emphasis, of people among the left or, whatever, of like protecting vulnerable groups, right? Yeah. And so there was Virginia, I believe, was the state that attempted to pass a bill that would require people use the bathroom correlated with their sex. And I remember, and again, I was like so far on the left, so yes, I remember being against it, but I remember just like normies were against it. There was a big like social media campaign, a big ACLU campaign. There were, if I recall correctly, people like there were boycotts of businesses and did some like not Hollywood or something. People were taking were threatening to take their businesses out and their money out and whatever. And so that was about 10 years ago. And so just the huge change in public opinion since then is really noteworthy. Again, especially on that topic, which frankly, most people see that as like the least offensive, essentially, of trans accommodations. People are more upset by sports participation, locker rooms, and youth medical interventions than they are about bathroom use. And now they're losing on bathroom use.
Yeah, it really, I don't know. Their messaging on it was no good. And they kind of like, with the whole thing, do you know what I mean? Like people, it was like as soon as you don't toe every single position or aren't like 100% with, you're out. And that made people who had any doubts, you know what I mean? As soon as it was like, well, if you're not 100% with us, you're against us, then people were just like ready to check out then. You know what I mean? That was because maybe they don't think these people have like, should have any rights, but they were like, well, fuck you. This isn't worth it.
I think it might be even worse.
This, it's also like, but there's other things too.
Yeah. But I think it's almost maybe even worse than what you just said. I don't think it's just the people who, because you're right. Like it was from the beginning. It was this top down. You need to accept everything we're saying, the entire basket, right, of policies and just like social prescriptions that we're providing. And if you don't, you're a bigot. You're right. Some people pretty immediately were like, okay, well, if that, then I'm out. Then I'm a bigot, I guess, right? But I actually think there's probably a larger portion of people who at that point went quiet because they didn't want to be a bigot, even if they had concerns. And now they've had time to learn some more and think more about it. So like they didn't just in a reactionary or reflexive way, which I would still have sympathy for. And I've done, my, how I think about things are influenced by, in a reactionary way often. But yeah, I think it's like worse for them. Whereas the people who didn't want to hurt anyone, not just didn't want to be seen as a bigot, but didn't want to be bigoted, took a step back, were quiet, right? They didn't speak over marginalized voices, and in that time, they've changed their mind. I think is part of what we're seeing here.
Yes. So in part, yes, it's like I didn't mean like immediately they did that, but like over time, if something came up and they were like, well, I'm not sure about this, then you kind of get like, you know what I mean, like thrown out of the group, if you will. And I think a lot of people were willing to go along with things that they didn't think were probably right or 100% fair, but they thought, well, this is such a tiny group of people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is like a non-starter. We don't need to focus on this. I'm just going to be okay with everything because that makes the most sense. It's compassionate. We don't need to like all of this focus on it. That like seems disproportionate. Over time, we see numbers changing. You see people can see kind of like the perverse incentive structures in like especially for kids needing to put kids on blockers so then they can compete in sport like you were saying with that. And then at a certain point, if you can't get all the way there and you're fucking, they say fuck you, well then the things that you may have like allowed for and given grace to, and you know what I mean, not really spoken up about, those are the things, then you're going to be much more like, you know what I mean, inclined to voice those dissenting opinions now. And the permission structure, like we've talked about, has like blown up in the last little while.
Right. In like, a positive direction, right, as far as we're concerned. Right. That more reasonable, thoughtful, liberally minded people have started saying things, right, that grants permission to the other people who want to be good people. And I think also, unfortunately, for the trans activist class or the trans maximalists, unfortunately for them, this is largely a social contagion. And so the battlefield has changed in the last 10 years, you know? So there is like something to be said that people just were more accepting and accommodating when this was less relevant, when there were fewer trans people, when the trans people who did exist were making an effort to pass in a binary way. You know, and so unfortunately, again, for the trans movement, the numbers of trans people exploded. The number of visible detransitioners exploded. I mean, 2016, I think that was like the very beginning of Lisa Littman first noticing the clustering of young girls. Like this was, there was no Segum, there was no what is Stella's. There was no Gen Spec. Right. Yeah. So a lot of things have changed in the 10 years since most normie Americans were against the idea of possibly restricting trans women from women's restrooms. A lot of things have changed for people. And one thing quickly, Chapingo says that this would be more interesting if we got cross correlation with political alignment. If you go into, I don't think you have to pay for it. I think most of this stuff is available for free. But if you go into the argument, Mag, they're on Substack, and they posted most of the graphs. Laksha Jain did on Twitter as well. But they do break it down by political alignment. They break it down by sex, and they break it down by who they voted for in 2024. So there's, you know, Democrat, Republican, 2024 Harris voter versus 2024 Trump voter, and whether they are a parent or not. And again, these findings are showing that even among Democrats, and especially among Kamala Harris voters who are parents, they still voted against. And when you add up the, like, you know, the strongly agree or disagree, depending on the phrasing of the question, when you add up that with the somewhat agree and even the neutral, because neutral to me is, I know I shouldn't, it's not an affirmative or a negative, right? But even that was sort of a dangerous place to be. I don't know, you know, like people choosing to be neutral really means they're not affirming it, right? They're not saying yes. That is like that's putting the brakes on it. And those, when you add those up, it's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming. And the only group, because I guess there must be some difference in breakdown between people that they are classifying as Democrats and people who they're classifying, who are self-reporting to be Kamala 2024 voters, because the like only group of people where there's something even like approaching a majority for the trans maximalist position is like the female Harris 2024 voters. Every other group in that breakdown is against essentially all of these interventions and policies.
Yeah, and even that, like, it doesn't look, it's not like an overwhelmingly supportive number when, like, we look at it on the screen. It's like parent Harris 2024 strongly support, it's still 26%. That's just not very overwhelming by any stretch of the imagination. So, well, at least for in this one. But they all looked, I don't want to say similar, but they all, none of them really went, you know, especially when you start getting into the medical stuff. That was the one I was just looking at before, was sports. But like for surgery and stuff, it's always going to go lower the more the more consequential the question is. So
yeah, and I mean they this is just like this is a polling insider thing or whatever, but like when you're making these questions, you intentionally phrase some of them in the positive and in the negative as like a check for that people are actually answering each question individually and not just trying to do a I strongly agree to all of them or whatever. It's a check there. And yeah, you see the same results even with the negatively framed question. That the people who are in strong support are then in, strongly don't support or whatever, or strongly disagree in the negatively framed question. So it seems pretty robust. Like we're actually measuring, or they are actually measuring what people are thinking here. And I think so these numbers themselves are very interesting to me. And a little bit like a sanity check in a good way, right? Because I know how I've changed so significantly on how I feel about this topic. And I know that things have changed. And like when Trump was elected, I was like, wow, this kind of vibe shift is real. It is as large as maybe I hoped it was, but wasn't sure that it was. And this again is like really reassuring. It's like, yeah, people are really moving in this direction. And that's I'm glad to see it. What's concerning to me about all this is just what I say is just like continued denial, basically, among people on the left. And this thing that this is not going to be news to anyone here, but just the incredible way that the left talks about all of their positions as if they are obviously and fundamentally true and good, and that they would win if people weren't so bigoted, and that they will win because the arc of justice or whatever bends towards justice, the arc of history. So they're just, and even in this article, and I know like Laksha Jain, he has to soften it. He knows who his audience is too, and he's on the left also, but even he's making the argument, he says very harshly or rather just very straightforwardly, like this is a overwhelmingly losing topic for us, right? Even among Democrats. He says, but things are looking really amazing for the midterm. I don't think this is going to affect us at all. It seems like people still, they don't have a strong preference for Republicans over Democrats in this arena. So basically don't worry about it. And so I don't see any signs of self-reflection coming.
No. But people really believed that that like the whole trans issue with the last election didn't impact, I think, the overall vote, and I think it did. For a lot of people, I think people didn't want to say that, though. A lot of people didn't want to say that because of what happens, when people say that. Especially people who are more geared on the left. You know what I mean? Like people on the right don't care. The people on the left who had I don't know, like issues with that, they didn't want to come out and say that. But I think it definitely had an impact. And to fail to reckon with that and to take that into account and to realize that this is just it's not a great issue. But beyond it, from like a political, like
strategic
political
perspective.
Reason, strategy, like there are some, I don't know, I think there are some clear problems, obviously.
know?
And I think kind of like demonizing the people who bring that up.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Where we fall in that, it becomes it's so flat. It's just like, well, no, people just have different concerns, or they have concerns about other things, and the people keep saying, but there's nobody. You don't know anybody. This doesn't have. Well, I don't know, but like, are you a parent? Do you hang out with young people? Like, who do you talking about? Because it's pretty prominent everywhere.
Laksha actually addressed some of this because, so first of all, Laksha and Jerusalem are getting like pilloried across social media, right? Especially on Blue Sky, but I'm seeing it on Twitter too. So everyone's mad at the messenger, right? They're mad at, how dare you bring this inconvenient information to our attention. But Laksha addressed part of that because, you know, there's plenty of people in his replies disagreeing with him or whatever. And you have the very common retort, which is, this is just because, you know, most people have never met a trans most people have never met a trans person, and all they know of trans people is like the evil caricature they see on Fox News. And Laksha was like, well, we did ask about, you know, knowing trans people, basically. And that number is up almost 15-20% from the last time it was polled. So where it was previously like 30%, so roughly 1 in 3 people knew or had met a trans person, that number was up to 45% in their most recent polling. So actually, people are meeting more. And again, it's not because trans people are bad or any of these things. So it's not that like meeting a trans person makes you dislike them, but that challenges that narrative, right? That the issue we're seeing here is that just no one knows. It's like, well, no, actually, your group is growing, like we addressed, because there is a very large social contagion component to this, and also the availability of these interventions has caused the group to grow, especially because there's no gatekeeping, right? And so you just have these interventions available to people without even they can get it paid for with their interest. In a former generation, not only were you gatekept in medical ways, which I'm for, even though I think those are still very limited because they all just entirely rely on self-report, but at least you also, like, you had to decide, you had to save up money, like you had to like there were you had to do things in your life to make it happen, where those things are just not necessary today. But so they're kind of losing on that.
There's something to be said about like needing to pay for something and to sacrifice like your own finances for it to your like appreciation and like continued desire for it even into the future. I actually think you know, you probably find more value of it for longer when you have like some stake in it, you know?
Right. There's something too, like I revealed preferences is probably not the correct phrase for what I'm trying to describe here, but like along those lines, right? It's like, let people show you how badly they want it by having to save money and having to make sacrifices and compromises to make it happen. So but you just reminded me actually of what one of the first thoughts that came to my mind was just, this totally not, and we already kind of knew this, that this influenced the election, right? We knew this because again, there was all of this polling and data that suggested that the most impactful ad of the election cycle was the they them right ad, and yet people on the left you have basically like the two groups people on the left. Both of them ignore the trans thing as playing a role. You have the one group that says no, it was actually Gaza, right? And then you have the other group that says no, it was inflation and just like affordability. And like, okay, all of these things played some role, and I'm certainly willing to lend more credence to the affordability and inflation, argument than the Gaza argument. But I think this just puts it back in people's faces, like, and okay, fair, there's maybe some low salience on these issues, like, so people are sort of against these policies, but they're not ranking them as their top priorities when compared to other policies, whatever. But I just feel like this really puts a lie to the idea that like that the Trump election was not a cultural backlash, in a way that the people on the left desperately need it not to be. And just now I'm thinking live, I want to compare these polls to any of the exit polls of, Gaza voters, basically, right? Because I'm willing to bet that when you survey the public, same thing across these across the political spectrum, that you are going to have stronger, more negative opinions against these trans policies than towards the state of Israel or an American-Israel partnership or anything like that.
If we look at across all the age brackets, probably that could be, not necessarily for young people, but so, but like, what are they going to do? I guess we see the backlash, or we see like kind of like so many issues have had backlash in their support. This is not like the only one. Like
Right.
I don't know, like the whole defund the police. There's kind of been backlash to that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. There's backlash to that. Like all of these things. So this is just like another one, right? I think it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward. There's like been a lot of like wreckage from the backlash for people who like are, you know, I would say sincerely impacted by those things. You know what I mean? Like both in like, you know, both Black people have been damaged by Black Lives Matter in various ways. Do you know what I mean? And like non-Black people have as well. And it's had impacts in, you know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see. And especially with trans people, we'll see what happens. I think that there is like an element of like targeted hate and disdain that trans people get that's like disgusting and bad, and it seems to only get worse, and I don't like that, and I think it kind of like takes away from all of the good arguments that you could that we could be making around like what is like the best way to culturally and societally, you know, like agree to do and facilitate for like a certain group of people and for young people, especially for young people, you know what I mean? It just kind of like takes away from all of that, you know?
Yeah. And I'm interested to see how they react, because in so many ways. So this is like this polling is a big deal, or at least I think it is, right? Because it's consolidating all of this. And once again, the poll was asked in like the most generous phrasing for the left wing, the maximalist position, right? They were building into the assumption that this is medically necessary, and that there are no like parental concerns involved. And they still lost so dramatically. So I'm really interested to see what the left will do with this. There's this like, it's very bizarre. This is like one of the, I don't know if I could say one of the few things, I'll put an asterisk there, maybe like one of the few things where the politicians don't seem to care what the public response is. And I think this goes back to them buying into this idea that this is a civil rights issue. And therefore, like they you know, they need to stand on principle in some way. But elected officials don't seem to be I mean, we saw what, like 1.5 Dems who came out very in a milquetoast way, questioning whether in some sports, in some cases, there might be an unfair advantage, you know, for males. And those people got, you know, kind of swiftly abused for saying anything. And so I don't know if they're
weird though that the left actually like expects like the far left. I don't know. Like as a person who spent most of my life very far left, I never had any expectation that like the government officials would take the positions that I had. That was never an expectation. That was never something I was after. That was never something I expected. Like I found myself always in like in a clash with them, if you will. And the point for me for a long time of having extreme positions, like what's the point of having an extreme position? It was like the extreme position affords the moderate position. So it just helps you bring things over. Like I didn't expect everybody to take on the degree that I took on, but it created the permission structure to shift things over just a little bit. We were never supposed to get all of what we wanted. When we would talk amongst ourselves, or at least people that I would speak to, most people recognized getting everything you wanted right away would be bad. because the world, society, how things are set up, it is just not, there's just not place for that now. It just will not work with the, with how everything that's been up until this point. You know what I mean? Like the complete overhaul isn't going to happen overnight. And most people kind of understood that. It feels like people now do not understand that and do not think that at all. You're muted.
I think that might have like something to do with a generational effect here. And also just, again, the sort of maybe also the types of things that you were protesting versus what they are, and the framing of these things. So again, the left views basically every salient political issue right now as a human rights, a civil rights issue.
Existential.
Abortion, immigration, trans intervention, right? All of these things are seen as, existential civil rights fights. And so like I'm actually blown away by what you just said, and it makes me like yearn for the Antifa of
of yesterday
of a right, exactly, because I don't think that's the perspective at all. I mean it's just not. Evidently it's not, right? These people are hostile is not strong enough a word to how these people feel about anyone who doesn't toe their most maximalist line.
They have a lot more people in play now, though, and it has there's a much more larger like societal and cultural machine that's propelling it forward in a way, and it's worked in a lot of ways, right? It's been very effective in a lot of ways. So it's very drunk on power, but I feel like the pendulum's going to swing, and then people inevitably will see what's going to happen, because I don't think we're ushering in the fucking revolution. Like just not happening now. So inevitably, I think things eventually have to, they won't keep going full steam ahead in that direction as they already haven't, you know what I mean? As it's kind of like slowed down in a lot of ways now. But I don't know. Did you see like Peter Boghossian posted a video where he was talking, I forget with who, but like essentially his cameraman got mad, and because they were talking about immigration in Western Europe. Did you see that at all?
Yes, just not the full video, but like the little like teaser of it that he posted online. I saw that. Okay.
Yeah. So the cameraman got mad and then stormed off and came back and then had a discussion with them off camera, but still, and his positions were he didn't answer a lot of the questions. He believes immigration is a human right and that people should be allowed to move. And at one point, Peter asked him, like, what if I showed you the data? Like, would it change if I showed you this data and you saw the data, would it change your mind? And he eventually was like, no. And I think that almost seems surprising to Peter and the other guy. But I'm like, no, you don't understand. They don't believe your data. Right. They think your data is rigged. They think your entire mechanism and how you want and got your data and who you asked and how you asked and how you're preparing the data. They think it's all manipulated.
Than that. It's worse than that. You're right. You are right that they think that about the data.
Yes.
But they don't even if it could be proved to them to whatever standard they hold that this data fit all the criteria that they would want it to, and in fact, whatever in this specific case, it still wouldn't change their mind. That's the amazing part and the really troubling part, is because they are on a moral crusade. So even if the data, even if it was true, and there's something to be said about that, right? Where it's like, okay, so if everyone voted for slavery, should we just reenact slavery? And it's like, well, no, obviously no, right? Because we have moral objections to this. So to like steel man where they're coming from. But that is how they see all of these things, that essentially we don't believe your data. But even if your data was true, it doesn't matter because it's bad. It's mean. It's wrong. It's bigoted. It's not nice. It's not nice. And so we can't do that. And that's really the problem. But that is pervasive. And I see that all the time. And Peter and his street epistemology was really the first person to cement that idea in my mind that I've used now in lots of debates and stuff since, of just like, what would it change? What would you, I'm sorry, what would it take for you to change your mind? What would you need to see? And it's incredible how many people can't answer that question or are unwilling to answer that question.
Yeah. No, for sure. But there is something to the fact of like, why won't they discuss with you? They won't discuss with you because they don't believe the set of factual knowledge that you know what I mean? You guys don't speak the same language.
It's because their beliefs are a house of cards.
Yes, but they won't use your like any of your references or any of your points because they don't believe them to be true. That in their mind, you know what I mean? That's why they won't do it. And they think that you're trying to trick them. You know, a lot of it is that. And yes, it is because it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. But many of these people also have just adopted conclusions and have not, have not really thought about things. And that's like, you know what I mean? They have the adopted positions with the conclusions and like a few talking points and they can't argue on,
no, definitely. And I think it's right. And so because it's so flimsy, even in just their understanding of it, it's a house of cards. So with a little pushback, it would come crumbling down. And I think there's also something, and again, maybe I'm projecting, but something that feels salient for when I held a lot of these beliefs. There is a fear of letting in challenging information, like as if it is going to, like, as if I can't handle it, basically, like what if it gets in there and makes me a bad person in some way or whatever. Like there was and I don't know that it was so conscious, like, the thought process around it, but there was absolutely like, it's not just like you don't engage with interlocutors who are challenging you. It's like, if you see something that is challenging, you don't click in, you don't read it, like you don't allow it to penetrate your mind and soil your party line there. And by party, I don't even necessarily mean Democrat or Republican, but and I just, again, I don't know where the hell they have to go. So I think of someone like Hutch, right? And I think you and I would both probably agree that Hutch has to do like a decent amount of like progressive virtue signaling because he goes so hard on the lefties. He has to also like, show his bona fides, right? Like, no, I am really left wing, and he is, or at least I believe that he is pretty left wing. He certainly seems more left wing than me.
More so lately,
right. But he makes the point, and he's correct. Like everyone's shitting on Gavin Newsom, calling him anti-trans, like just the big joke, right? With the Hassan Piker saying the Democrats will sell you out. All of this just absolutely retarded stuff, because as Hutch points out, Gavin Newsom has been the most pro-trans or trans maximalist, like governor in the country. He's enacted some of the most egregious egregious laws and policies in his state. So many of the people who have been irreversibly harmed from these interventions are Californians, right? So Hutch is correct about that. But then Hutch also holds the position where, again, I appreciate Hutch's pragmatism here, which is like, Dems need a majority to fight the fascist Republicans. And so, yes, if there is a competitive red or purple district where a pro-life Democrat wants to run, then Hutch is like, then we should be supporting that person. Will he say that if it's a gender critical Democrat somewhere? I don't know. And that is, I hope he would. I hope he would. And I'm not trying to shit on Hutch here. I hope he would, because I do think Hutch also tries to be consistent, right?
I think he
but
would.
but I think that's a position where it just, the brains break. Like, maybe he would be willing, maybe he would say, yeah, we can get behind a candidate in a purple district or whatever, in a red district, who doesn't believe that trans women should play in women's sports. I don't know if he would even be able to say it. Like, I think that would be too much of a hit to his progressive bona fides to say, well, we should support someone who's against youth intervention, period, who wants it, who believes that it should be banned under 18. I don't know if he would even get behind that.
Well, from what I've seen him say, I think he's very, like, blue no matter who. Like, very, very.
I know, but that's the point. That's the point of me bringing this up, is that I think this is the type of issue that just breaks brains and breaks logical consistency.
I hear you.
Like, I think this might be the one where he would have to say, blue no matter who, except not the anti-trans person, basically, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I would hope not. From what I've, from what he said, I like, if I take him at his word, like, you know what I mean? With his, like, I will vote whoever the Democrat on the ticket is type of thing, then I would say no. But, we would have to see. But I can see many people doing that, easily, right, because it is one of those issues that just kind of, like, breaks people's brains,
Yeah, and, like, I don't know, I guess it does make me wonder, and even just the way they're talking about it too, right? The framing of people who are bought into this is that they are obviously correct, and now it's just like, how do we, even the way that Laksha framed it, where he's, like, trying to be positive, but he's like, the bottom line is, we've lost people on this, and we need to focus on getting them back. Them back. Not, we need to reevaluate if our position here is correct, is doable, is whatever. But no, we need to change that. And I guess, like, okay, fair. Maybe I'm nitpicking too much. As if you're in the game of politics, you're in the game of trying to change people's minds, right, and influence and persuade them. So I guess that's all fine and dandy. But I guess I was just, like, hit with the deja vu, this unpleasant deja vu, when Laksha released this information, because it just reminded me of when I actually still felt like I was on the left trying to change things, just like the giant brick wall that I watched Laksha be met with instantly. And yeah, just like unwavering belief that they are obviously correct, and the only issue here, it goes back to the, oh my god, I'm triggered now. I feel like the biggest cope of the left post-election was our messaging. It's not our policies, right? It's not, it's our messaging. The right wing has this alt media sphere, and they have all of their short messaging, and everyone gets on message. And there is, like, truth to that. There's a lot of truth to, like, the sort of mimetic time that we're living in and whatever. But it just reminds, I'm triggered again. I'm reminded that the left truly believes that they have the right position on everything. And in fact, they would have the popular position on everything if they just communicated more effectively. I feel I'm, like, antsy with this information, because I know that they're very likely not going to do absolutely anything about it. And I hope they do. That's the thing too. I'm not rooting. There are some people then who were like, yep, let them keep going down this road, like, give us another red victory in 2028. And I'm just like, no. I don't want to accelerate anymore. I said this a couple episodes, but I kind of view I don't regret my Trump vote in 2024, but I view it as inadvertently making an accelerationist vote. Because I thought that bringing in the big cultural backlash would everyone would have to reevaluate, but no, everyone's just digging down further, and I don't want that. I don't want everyone to keep yo-yoing back and forth to extremes, but I feel like that's all that's going to happen, and I'm very it black pills me.
Yeah, they have no. It seems that there's no desire to, like, win anybody back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
None. And they're just like counting on the fact that like OMB, Orange Man Bad, is so bad that it will drive people back the other way. And there might be some people for sure. I don't, I don't think it's like no people. I just don't know if it's enough people,
Right.
That you're gonna get back with that, But it would be better to have like, a more sane
Yes.
party.
Better for everyone. Better for the country, right? If for more sanity, better for trans people, like just like literally better for everyone.
Yeah. You can still
for the
move
health
towards,
and well-being. Yeah.
like none of like a lot of the issues, like you can move towards all of these things, you can move towards like increasing rights and healthcare for trans people, but you could like do it in a slower, more measured way that like, takes into account like what adjustments you're gonna make and what happens
but I don't
there.
know what, but even
like
that,
nobody
like,
wants
can
to
you
do that though. Well,
yeah,
nobody
but
wants to do that.
No, I know nobody wants to, but
I mean, I'm not talking about now, because
but I
you
even mean,
can't
but I
move
mean
more now.
Well, but I guess that's my point, right? So it's like zoom in and more literally, what rights don't trans people have? What protections don't trans people have? That's the problem too, is the left, and this is not just a left thing, this is a sort of a social justice, which I guess is on the left thing, but missions don't end, right?
Yes,
they just find something new. And so it's like, what rights are we talking about here? When people, what kind of legal discrimination is there even? Like I just don't know what planet we're living in. That's the problem too, because you're right. It's like, listen, I'd be happy if we had people who were at least trying to say what you just said, we need to work incrementally, and add these things on, whatever. But even those people, I think, believe in a delusion. And I don't mean the delusion of trans, but the delusion of trans discrimination, essentially, in any meaningful legal way.
Yeah.
Well, what is there even to fight?
Right now, I don't think that there's like, because it's been pushed, but I'm saying like theoretically, previously, before it all blew up, if there were issues that needed to be dealt with, the messaging could have been, we maybe like 10, 15 years ago, there was stuff to do, or there was more discrimination, societally or culturally. And there are ways to, help with that. But it wasn't, I don't think it necessarily, the answer wasn't like what happened, obviously, right? And are there issues people have to deal with like racism? Sure, on like individual levels. I don't think that there's like this mass systemic racism that people talk about, but there are smaller things here and there, and we can deal with those things, like, so all of these issues that there could be work done, but it's not sexy, it's not revolutionary, you know what I mean? It's like very nuanced gray area, like not, people aren't getting like impassioned over it, but yeah. So but that's like, we come back to the same thing of like the problems are the problems, and like the incentives are fucked, and it's also very it's like a very high emotionally charged culture we live in, you know what I mean? Like you're not,
you can say that again.
Anything, it's very, everything is a lot, so I don't know if you move away from it. I don't know how you move away from it.
Have you heard the concept of high versus low decoupling?
No. But
okay,
maybe,
so I don't,
maybe not by that name.
Yeah. So I don't know the origin of like this term. It's being used in a psychological way. I don't know how this is born into any like long-standing research or whatever, but it's this idea of there are people are high decouplers or low decouplers, and that means like their ability to break things apart essentially dispassionately.
Okay,
right?
yes, I've heard, yeah.
And so what I've come to find, you know, especially I guess through my trans advocacy of going to the gender critical side, and then really just taking a lot more interest with the sexology stuff, right? So I'm that would bring me into conversations about all different weird types of sexualities and stuff like that, and conversations that I'm both interested in having and wanted to have publicly that people would object to because they kind of mix up the is and the ought, right? Like I want to be able to talk about these things that aren't necessarily good, that I'm not condoning. I'm not saying they're healthy, but they're happening. I want to talk about them. I want to explain the nuance.
Yeah.
And some people have just this
descriptively. Yeah.
Exactly. And some people just like can't do that, right? Like, you know, it's a similar thing, I think, with like talking about certain hereditary and stuff, with talking about like sex differences, with talking with lots of like uncomfortable with talking about pedophilia, with talking about autogynephilia, not to link those two things together, right? But
yeah,
people have a very hard time pulling these things apart in a dispassionate way. And I think that's like a lot of what I see around us is like very low decoupling, right? It's like people can't have conversations, general prescriptive conversation. It's kind of like the per capita or like the anecdote issue too, right? Where the people who like, you try to talk about something, you know, based on at the population level or at the prescriptive level, people say, yeah, but my friend who has the X, Y, or Z or whatever, right? And it makes it like it makes it impossible to fucking discuss anything. And so I feel like that's like a lot of the issue that we're in. Is like I feel like a high decoupler surrounded by a lot of low decouplers.
Yes, I would, you know, I'd probably put myself in that
definitely, like,
obsessively, you know, pulling things apart category. And you know, like there are benefits.
It's a practice too.
Yeah.
Well, but
there,
and
like, I also have to say there are drawbacks to it. You know, like it's not all great being so analytical. I think there are benefits to it. I think it's a skill that people should have. I think I see a lot of people who, you know, seemingly, I believe that they have it. I think they just don't do it. But for people who are like, for me, like I can't not do those things, and that's like probably good to be able to like not do it sometimes too. You know what I mean? Just to like see it's probably good to have the low resolution view sometimes, you know?
The low resolution view, sure. Sure. I was gonna ask you to like, because are you just being coy? Are you just basically trying to say like that we need to say that there could be something wrong with where we're at? Because I don't know that there's anything wrong with being a high decoupler. Like the only drawback that I possibly see in the context of like how I'm using these words, at least, is like sometimes it's not socially productive in certain scenarios, right? Like if someone is having some sort of like, if someone can't pull these things apart, you know, it's sort of like, again, with like it's relevant now, but like with Michael, like I'm team Michael Tracy for people tuned into this Epstein stuff.
Yeah.
But for the people who are like, who keep telling him, you know, this is not the hill to die on when he makes distinctions about pedophilia and about women of sexual reproductive age who are young, who are, you know, who you could call teenagers and girls, right? But who have adult bodies,
it is the hill to die
babies.
On. It's the hill to die on, because we don't invoke images of babies being fucking.
But this is high decoupling,
because we don't take those and we don't make we don't put that image in your head and use that. You see what I mean? To sell an issue where that's not happening.
Weaponize it.
To do that is disgust. Like, yes, I agree. And I get very mad. And I've gotten very mad over the last few days about this. Because I think it's fucking gross. I think it's gross to use that word when you're not talking about that. Bad things can be bad, and they don't all have to be pedophilia. It could be what it is. And Epstein was a fucking sleazy, creepy dude. And he can be bad and he can be bad without being that. And it's like very
He was a
important to be
pervert. He was a
descriptively
pervert.
accurate. Yes.
He was a pervert. He knew damn well what his age was, and he knew that he was interested in teens. But these were females of sexually reproductive age.
Yes.
Most of it wasn't like sex or anything even really approximating that, but that's a separate issue. But yeah, he was absolutely a pervert and a creep. Yeah, like and not a pedophile. And that the distinction does matter. Yeah. But yeah, so I feel like the only drawback really to being a high decoupler, maybe a high decoupler who was also insistent on having the conversation, is like it's not always socially prudent, right? Like it's going to make people uncomfortable, and you don't have to be that person in every social situation. Fine, I get that totally. Like that's fair. But other than that, I don't really see the drawbacks. It seems like a skill that people should actually work on. It feels like related. It feels like a stoicism adjacent skill, right? It's like, which that's not quite the right word either, but it's just this like everyone needs to be able to regulate their fucking emotions to talk about ideas. There are so this is maybe the root of what like drives me so much, right? And I've said this over and over again, so I'm sorry to be redundant, but like I'm online talking, because obviously I think I have worthwhile things to say, but because I feel like there are really important conversations that are upsetting and uncomfortable and triggering that reasonable, thoughtful people are not having because they drive so many emotions. And so we're leaving it to fucking idiots to have the conversation. And so I need everyone to calm down and have the conversation, you know? Because obviously avoiding these things or trying to force people to take a line, right, to say to believe a narrative without allowing them to walk through the thought process is obviously dangerous. That's an overused word too, but like it brought us to where we are now, to this extreme polarization. It's dangerous at least to social cohesion, right? And so yeah, I do feel like it's a skill that everyone needs to yes, right, like it is a hill to die on, and why can't we talk about it? Like, no, of course it does. This even right, it's like, no, it doesn't make you a pedophile to think that there's meaningful differences here, right? And to think that words matter. The same thing, right? I mean,
that's like everybody
take it out of the
few
take it out of the pedophilia
like,
thing.
why do you need to make because you need to make the distinction? Like,
it's like with the genocide thing, right? It's like people who want to, it's a much less loaded version because it's not sex with kids, right? And that really understandably makes people upset, right? But it's like, oh, why are you even defending this? What does it matter? People are not, well, it matters because words matter. Language and how we communicate with each other matters. And the truth matters, right? Yeah, okay. And rant, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think it could just be that like with the high-low decoupling, I might just not be like
I'm not
100% on the definition of it, but like
I'm not explaining it well either. So
I was just like trying to Google it, but like I'd have to like sit down and like read it without talking at the same time. But yes, all to say is that like for me, I can be like overly analytical at times, to a point that it is potentially detrimental either to like moving my ideas along where I want to go with them, or in being able to like effectively communicate, or you know what I mean? Or like socially, being like very stuck on like word choices, but like, you know, it's like an autism thing, and like,
right,
you know, so
I think you're an extremely effective communicator.
I am an intentional communicator. I will say that. I don't always know if I'm as effective as I want to be, but I feel like I am an intentional communicator. Like I try, but I also like I went to school for like systems and group dynamics. So like spend a lot of time of like, what do I want to say? What do I want the person to hear? What's the message? How is it being transmitted? And like, how do I need to like tweak my own self to be able to like have the listener receive what I'm hoping that that they're, you know what I mean, that I want to be sending.
You really are so good at that. So if that was your either you were trained really well, you know, when you were doing that, or that's kind of what you were made to do. Because I mean, here's a little behind the scenes information, but when Kay and I first started talking, you reached out to me. You were like, you had heard me on the shows and whatever. And I would check my DMs, and it was always like after I was done streaming. You would usually message me like while I was talking, but I wouldn't see it until after.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, I feel like, that we obviously agreed, and you were very sympathetic to the message that I was trying to get across. And you were like, I feel like they're not hearing this. And if you tried saying it like this or whatever, and you would put it in like one sentence, two sentences, and I would read it after, and I'm just like, oh my God, like I literally was like blabbering on, for an hour and meeting resistance, whereas like that is what I was trying to communicate. That would have been so much more effective, and also probably more effective in terms of who my interlocutors were. And you did that for me like multiple times. Again, never in time for me to ever use it, and I'm too ADHD to, even if I like, I need like so much repetition. Like I would have to like use it for it to come kind of whatever, I don't know, naturally for me. So I still am not as nearly as effective a communicator as I would like to be, but I think you really do excel in that way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's also very easy when like we're watching people have a discussion, and you know what I mean, as opposed to partaking in the discussion, because like when I'm just watching, it's like it's much easier, because I don't have to be, you don't actually have to like participate in it. So you have a lot more, I think, like free space in your brain to like come up with all of your.
Right. You have just like less blood rushing through, and that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I rather than sit and yell at my computer, because sometimes, and I think a lot of it when I would message you is because I would have some of like the same takes or views as you, and I'd hear, especially sometimes, the people mischaracterizing you, and we had spoken, so like I knew it wasn't like an accurate, do you know what I mean, like an accurate portrayal of your views, and because they were similar to mine, it like would be much more like aggravating to see. And especially in a lot of these spaces, they're just like, there's not a lot of good you know what I mean? I don't think good.
Yes.
But there's questionable representation of like people who are not super left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's like people who are on the right, but they feel like very like tokeny of the right in some ways. And I don't know. I don't know if they're representative of the views of the views I hold, especially now.
Yeah.
So, but.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, like, I think I feel confident that the views that you and I hold, it's capturing some group of people out there, right? That are like more to the right than the bulwark, but not traditionally right. You know what I mean? And like, and I think that's also why I would get frustrated when they like would try to make out like what I was saying or my worldview or whatever was incoherent and petty in some way. And it's like, well, I guess like even if that's true, like there's then a lot of people, I guess, have this incoherent and petty worldview, right? Like you still kind of have to grapple with it, because like I just know that I just know that I know that this is representative of how, some segment of the population is feeling earnestly. Yeah.
And I do think people are like, there is an element of people who are getting fatigued with the way that discussions and the way politics is. Like there are people who are tired of like the like effective polarization. You know what I mean? Not the all or nothing, the high emotional like language all the time. So I think that there are groups of people who like want to be having like sane conversations and like disagreeing with people, or in having conversations or disagreeing with people and just being like okay with that. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to. It's like it doesn't have to mean anything. You know.
I really thank God for Clubhouse. That stupid app that I wasted really so much time on, and
I don't think I've ever been on it.
I would get myself in such high emotional, like I would get myself so triggered, in a way that like it really is like a Twitter algorithm on steroids. Like I would fiend for the triggering sensation in my body. You know, like I would then be searching to find like the most offensive conversation title that I could find to go in to hear, like to be triggered. So anyway, so there were definitely negative. There were negative aspects to it, but
yeah,
Clubhouse is where I got to just argue with people and hear other people argue. And yet there was a lot of like divides and meanness on Clubhouse in the way that there is with politics, but also because Clubhouse was its own like little mini universe that people would spend a lot of time on. Are you familiar with what Clubhouse was?
It's like a talking app, right?
Yes. It was like Twitter Spaces, basically, but the entire app is Twitter Spaces. So it's different. Like you make a title of what you want to talk about, and you open a space, and then you can bring people up, whatever. They can listen or they can join the conversation.
Popular in like 2020.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So like right in the it was like a pandemic kind of thing.
Correct.
Like, not only a pandemic. I think that like it. That really boosted its popularity because everyone was...
No, totally. And that's a good point. That's why everyone was spending so much time on it, because a lot of people were home or their jobs and things look different. But it became a thing where, you know, the heavy users were on it lots of hours of the day. It was the type of thing that you would have on in the background, and like it's like you're having like long phone calls with friends at a certain point, right? And so then people would disagree, but then also coexist in this little universe, so they still liked each other and could just like have and there were also people, so there were the hyper partisans, obviously, but then there were also the people who just like to talk about ideas and can have contentious conversations and don't need to agree with their friends, right? And I was just exposed to so much of that on Clubhouse. Just like changed me for the better, even though there were certainly negative implications and whatever along the way. And I met some crazy people and weird stuff on Clubhouse too. But
you were arguing as a leftist then.
I had my change there, really. Okay. I was arguing as a leftist at first. I had like a group, like it was like a Jewish advocacy gays and theys group. Like I had all the cringe stuff, and then a small war broke out in Israel, Gaza, and that was like the topic of conversation for a long time. So I was in a million of those spaces for a long time, whatever. But so my whole, I guess when I left Clubhouse, really, I was like the token liberal in the right wing spaces by that point. So I had changed a lot, but that I was still kind of holding on. I was still a Democrat. I was still registered as a Democrat. I was still trying to have influence in the conversations in left wing spaces, but I had changed significantly. But Clubhouse really modeled that for me and allowed me to participate that in a way that people really like. I think it's highly beneficial. Not that everyone like wants to debate or whatever or have these conversations, but there is not enough like thinking through and discussing ideas. There's just a lot of reposting ideas, right? And there's a ton of censorship and self-censorship, really more so social, interpersonal censorship and self-censorship. And I think that's at the root of a lot, because so many of these, even just to like kind of tie it back to the trans stuff at the beginning, like so many of these questions even really are fraught because people aren't even really talking about the same thing necessarily when they're talking about trans and when they're talking about these interventions. Like we're not even working with the same definitions here. And now I'm just again, sorry, I'm just ranting about the state of I guess, like media and social interactions, but
yeah. And it's like weird because on one hand there is a lot of self-censorship, and on the other hand there's like no self-censorship in some ways, like comparatively. Like I don't know, like it used to be, like I think I've said it used to be hard to be a weirdo and like a political extremist. You know, like there used to be like a social, like there used to be a cost to it, and now that cost is seemingly very, very low. And so there was an amount of like self-censorship, and it was more like decorum though. Like I fucking miss decorum. I miss decorum, and I miss like the polite, I want people to not rules. Take their I really full miss selves polite to work. Society. Yes, I miss polite society rules a lot. And the people who broke those rules were very okay with the consequences of breaking them. And that's fine. But like for everybody to be breaking all of the rules of polite society and then freaking out and having like shit fits about the consequences of it, or that people don't like it, that I find, you know, like really intolerable. And it's like very cringe. But yeah, so there was an element of like censorship or self-censorship. Like there always has been, and now there is too, but it's just in like, before you were keeping the crazy beliefs to yourself, and now you're afraid to not share the like, you know what I mean, the wildest, most fringe beliefs with everybody. It kind of like completely flipped.
No, totally right. And even in no, you're right, because both of these things are happening. So people are afraid to say that, like, maybe even mundane thing or something that was mundane 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, because of social consequences. But they're going into work and like telling their boss that they are having a rough mental health day, you know, and they are like posting stream of consciousness. Everyone's has a public diary right now. Right. And they're putting their medical diagnoses and all of these things in their bio. So you're right. There's a duality.
There's like a
paradox
bit of a flip-flop
of sorts.
So like we kept those things quiet, and now those things are very out loud. And anybody who has a problem with them being very out loud is like kind of censoring those, you know, those feelings. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think everybody should, you know, bring your whole self to work. And I don't know.
No, I think that's like the biggest thing we have to change.
Yeah, and
all the issues we talked about today.
Yeah, and it has to do with like how we're raising like young people, right? Because like there are people who can handle that, you know, those social consequences, and that's fine. Like, but they're like a minority of people. That's why the weirdos were always like, they were weird, because there weren't a lot of them. When everybody's a weirdo, nobody's a fucking weirdo anymore. It's like when everybody's queer, then who the fuck's gay? Like what does it even mean? You know, when a straight man can call, when a man who only likes to sleep with women can call himself queer, like there's no more, like gay has lost its meaning.
Yeah.
You know what it like?
No, yeah. Well, and there's something to what you're saying about like when you used to have an extreme belief, like you had to be able to back it up, even if not necessarily intellectually, because not everyone's going to have the same capacity for that. You had to like, emotion, like you had to be willing to like, you know, stand behind it, have a little like, chutzpah with it. Whereas now, right, it's, you just need to reshare, repost, just kind of like type it out, right? And then people are sort of in the opposite way. They're so they hold these really extreme beliefs, but they're super fragile in having in being deemed extreme, right? Or being challenged anyway, in a way that, like you're saying, in 20 years ago or whatever, you had to be able to, you were marking yourself as the weirdo, right? And so you had to,
And like there was
people want to be weird and not
those...
labeled and not viewed as weird. They want to be extreme without being viewed as, without actually being outcast in any way.
Yeah, but it's like they also want like the cool points that you get for being like an eccentric weirdo. But like, so it's all fucked up.
True.
Right? So
yes,
and that's why like became like becoming more conservative became regressive. Like that's why like the conservative movement started to look cooler than the super far left because everything kind of flip-flopped, but not completely also. So who knows where it's going. I don't know where it's going. They always come back to what do we do and how do we fix it?
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on? I know when I first sent you the polling or told you about it, you said you wanted to talk about what, like extremism? Was that what you said you want to talk about?
Well, I think also just thinking about like what I mentioned before about, I guess, the point of holding extreme beliefs is to afford the moderate beliefs. And I think that like people have lost that. Like, what is the point of holding the extreme positions? It's like to hold a line, right? It's like it's never been about achieving the line now. It's about kind of like dragging everything that way. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like people want it all right away. And I mean, yes, of course, I want everything I want also. But I think we have to, I don't know, if you're holding radical positions, I think it's, I don't know, you have to see what the point is for that, because we're not getting, if we put all of those things into place, they don't work on one end or another. You know what I mean? So
I don't think most people today have that mindset that you were talking about of like, the anti-fascist in your day. It's so funny acting like you're so old, but I think they don't have any concept of that this wouldn't work. They think it just would. It just would work, I guess. Well,
you have to see how would that work and what does that look like? And like I don't know. I don't think like we're so unique in our ability to think these things out. I think people can. I think people don't necessarily want to. I think it's just I think it's a lot of like cliquiness and this is my social circle and this is what like politics has become like social, like really enmeshed with like socialization and like celebrity, right? So
it used to be taboo to talk about politics. It used to be a thing, right? Like it's actually quaint now, right? But it was to be polite and respectful, like it was understood that people could and would disagree and that you don't want to fight with people, right? Like, we all that the priority is getting along. And there are drawbacks to that too, but
the personal
we're on the
political.
opposite side. Yeah. So cringe. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But that's essentially, that's kind of, and I think we did some of that to help usher that in, so
that's actually like, maybe I just cringed and I winced, but, and again, this is, I know this is obviously not a unique or novel thought, but I think that's like actually really deep to the root of what our issues are right now is this idea of the personalist political. It's why there is such high emotional salience for all these things. It's why every policy disagreement seems like a civil rights issue because people are telling you that their life is on the line, even when it's not. They believe it is.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, they believe it is. And they believe that like you're an existential threat to them, and that like they think that the difference.
Think about how many young women have been radicalized, right? Just to believe that like half the country or more like wants them to die and have no autonomy, right? Even you and I have talked about small disagreements and whatever on the abortion issue, but even like putting aside what people believe the policies, you know, should be and where lines should be drawn, there's something evil and dark about weaponizing this issue to convince a bunch of emotional women, for lack of better terms, that they are an existential danger, basically, and that they're being hunted by people who hate them and want to own them. Yeah, that's really fucking bad for social cohesion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we did it with women. We've done it with like people in all different races. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We've done it with like gay people, trans people, like, you know, everyone thinks, you know, that everyone's after them.
Yes, no, it's so true. It's part of the well, the gay community is so guilty of this, stoking fear within the community. The whole Matthew, I mean, I'm sure people who are watching this right now might be familiar with this, but like the entire Matthew Shepard story was like literally a lie. The cover story is a hoax, you know, not, he did die. That was not a hoax, right? But it was a drug deal gone awry. It was not a gay bashing.
Yeah.
In fact, the man who killed him, he had slept with before. The man who had killed him was like bisexual himself, and like they knew each other. It was not a gay bashing. There were drugs involved. He had gone and like injured other people earlier. It was not targeted just at Matthew. Like the whole thing was is a hoax, basically, that has convinced gay people that there are people out there who want lots of people, you know,
to kill them.
Roaming wanting to kill them. Same thing with black people, and the false statistics about death by police and stuff. Like there are people actually telling black people that you are being hunted. You are being and again, and so black people, not all, big asterisk, right? There are people out there who believe that they're being hunted. Do you know how psychologically damaging that is, and physically damaging? Sure. Like your physical health deteriorates when you are in a constant state of fight or flight because you believe you're being hunted down. Yeah. And this is all downstream of the personal is political and weaponizing people's personal situations and fear mongering so that you can get their political support.
Yeah. And if I saw the world that same way, and I thought that was happening to people, any group of people, I would feel mobilized and, you know what I mean? Incredulous and impassioned and wanting to do something too. It's just like, I don't see all that and then say, it's all right. No, like I just have a different assessment of things, right? Like, it's not that I lack or that you lack the care or the compassion for people, right? Like I am still anti-oppression. Like oppression is bad. That's how I became. That's why I got into fucking leftist politics. And authoritarianism is bad. And the same things that brought me to leftism are the things that made me leave the current, you know, iteration of it. And then other things happen. I'm still against those things, like, you know, on a fundamental level, I guess within our own society, you know. So yeah, it's just I have to see the world differently now.
Yes. Right. I'm against rape and sexual harassment. And also it is good to tell women that they should not walk alone at night, especially if they've been drinking, especially if they are wearing skimpy clothing. It is good to tell women that they are going to be more vulnerable if they are wearing skimpy clothing and have been drinking and all these things. Like, and it's not because of lack of care. You could argue that it's entirely driven by care, right? I care about the mental, you know, the well-being of these people, and that's why not. I don't know. Yeah, that's why having the full perspective matters.
Yes. I mean, we could argue that it would be literally reckless to raise a child and to not tell them about the dangers of the world. You know what I mean? To have them not know it all, or to put them in a situation, or to tell them to go do those things without knowing those dangers, right? So, and that doesn't mean that people who act badly don't have agency, but like there are things we can do to mitigate our risk factors, and we should be able to know what those are, and then make the appropriate choices based on like the reality of the situation.
This reminds me of do you watch Peter Boghossian got in like big trouble with the feminist gender criticals?
Yes.
He had like two like back I think it was Cara Dansky and then Julie Bindel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just so painful to listen to.
Yeah.
Because like even if they didn't feel that Peter was like sufficiently emotionally sympathetic,
yes.
you know, like there was nothing wrong with what he said. Everything that he said was helpful, and the response was fucking crazy, and that was just like more of a validation that I mean that feminists are crazy, and including the gender critical ones, unfortunately.
Helen Pluckrose wrote something about that whole interaction that was good, and I thought was helpful. I forget what it was now, and I think I commented on it or to her that like
she's
agree.
A high decoupler.
Yes. And she just posted something wonderful today.
I love her.
But it was something to I forget what it was, but it said something to the effect of like, if I listen to those conversations of Peter and I'm trying to listen to it as if I'm like as if I'm who he's speaking to, he can come across as a little, I don't want to say condescending, paternalistic, but like a little bit like that. And I don't think he does it on purpose. I think when he says something like, so explain to me what you mean, and he'll like repeat it, it can kind of sound, I don't know, it can kind of sound a little, if you're not used to it, it might sound condescending or like or what the fuck, why you keep repeating, you know what I mean? And I think
he actually talks like that to everyone.
Yes,
right. If you follow him to know, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that it can come across as, I don't know, I could see it getting under people's skin. And I think that that's sometimes what happens. And I think that people then become more defensive. And I think that this is something that, like, yes, he could keep doing it and he doesn't have to change. And he can also start his conversations with like, this is something I do, and like I don't do it for X, Y, and Z reason. I'm like sincerely trying to understand you. And I think if you put that in front, it could, if you put something like, you know what I mean, gave that kind of like, this is something I do and I do it with sincerity, it could maybe take away from some of the defensive-ness.
Mitigate some of that.
Sometimes, I think sometimes that's what, at least what I see happening, people getting a little bit like, you know, because they're not used to having somebody check to make sure that they understand them well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but, I think I think it's mostly unintentional. I think maybe sometimes he leans into it sometimes, and maybe he was leaning into it certainly by the second conversation there. But I appreciate it because it's A, it's funny, and B, it depends on what his goal is, right? Because I like, as you and I talk about, it's like, well, if you want to change people's mind, then you have to be willing to contend with like what their emotional walls are going to be, right? If you're interested in getting past those walls, maybe you're not, and that's also fine too. Maybe you're actually communicating to a different audience. So there, I see value too in just like not doing the as the heterodox space used to call the throat clearing, and just being like, no, I'm just talking to you. You can deal with me, you know, like I'm respectful, you know, like I'm very open-minded. I will let you speak, all of these things, right? And so I'm going to do this. So I respect both approaches, really.
Yeah, and it really does depend on what you're going for. If you're trying to be sincerely heard, then sometimes you have to let people know that you're being sincere. And if you're having a different type of conversation or a performative conversation for other people to hear and to like help lead them through the thought process, then you might not need to do that. But it really does depend on like what you're trying to get out of it. He seemed to be a little confounded with like some of the reception of it though. So
that's true. He did seem like
to So then it might be like something to, you know, understand how you come come across.
Yeah.
But, you know.
But also, like, oh, I should stop about to say something crazy. Not crazy, even. just so... I don't want to sound, I don't know. Feminists, like,
yes,
there's like a lot wrong with the rad femme, you know,
yes.
like worldview and mindset and everything. Like they also like
they're very hostile to men in general. Yes.
Yes. Right. But yeah, I agree with you. It seems like he was surprised by the reactions he got. So maybe it was not intentional in that way. I giggle. I'm just thinking about I feel like, you know, sometimes in the straight epistemology, sometimes it does seem like he's leaning into it. And it's so fun. And it's only when it's deserved. He's certainly, you know, is not going to give that type of energy to someone who isn't super hostile already with him. But I'm just thinking about, I love when he, like, we'll tell them that he's a gender scholar when he has some of these conversations, and it's so good.
No, Peter's, I've really enjoyed like his videos and conversations, and just like the walking through the thought process, especially like at the point where I was having, like, you know, my whole worldview challenge. It was like, it was like so nice to go through step by step. You know
he's a gem, and he's someone that I feel like as I've moved, that essentially that we've moved at similar paces, or like I still, you know, I still feel like in the ways that he's moved right, I have too, but he's still he still is fundamentally, you know, pro-gay, you know what I mean? Like
he's liberal.
He's got these like liberal sensibilities too. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
In ways that, like we've already said before, other people who were very inspirational to me in my ideological turn, I've moved further than them, or they've moved it to a space that I'm, you know, that I'm not comfortable with. But Peter is someone who I feel like I still can look to him and largely agree with where he's at. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I feel similarly. Yeah.
Okay, well.
Thanks for hanging out, guys.
Yeah.
I think there's any.
I wonder if anyone, I don't know if most of you guys are just are chat only people, but we could maybe, like, you know, drop a link one of these days and see if people want to chat with us.
Yeah. That'd be fun. Or if you guys have any ideas. Topics you think will be fun, let us know. You know.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be back soon.
Yes.
We will talk.
We totally will.
Out.
Yes.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you. Have a good night. Thanks for hanging out, guys.
And take care, Kay and chatters.
Yeah. Take care, guys. See you later.
Bye.